Martin, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks, Peter, and thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Oh, I've known you online for maybe about a year now, but it's the first time that we actually see each other and talk.
Yeah, that's right.
So I was really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you are a maker. You live in Austria, and it's around midnight at your time now.
Yeah, that's correct.
You're a night owl, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's also
It seems
correct.
like that is like a common characteristic between makers. A lot of makers tend to do all the making at night.
I never noticed that, but that might be. Yeah, why not?
I've been talking to a lot of people. What is it about night? It's like it's quiet. It's like your brain seems to work better.
Well, I actually really don't know. It's just that it is like that. It's hard for me. It's hard for me to get up. But when I'm up and running, I run as long as till my battery is finished. So
Literally.
Sometimes I really have to force myself into bed because when I know I have a meeting the next day and I have to get up, so I like to cut it that I have at least 6.5 hours sleep. If there's a meeting, or as I'm not much of use in the meeting next day. But besides that, I stay up till I drop into bed, till I am tired.
Yeah, interesting. I'm the exact opposite. Like I'm a morning person, so I have to get up really early in the morning, which means I have to go to bed like very early at night. It's most people.
When do you get up?
5:30, 6 o'clock.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. But then, like you, I run with it until my brain drains or is drained of energy, and that's usually late afternoon. But every day is a long day. So I thought maybe let's start with asking you take a few minutes and tell us about yourself and give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. As you said, I'm living in Austria, and I've been born in Austria. I've been raised in Austria. I've lived for a long time. I grew up in the city of Innsbruck. It's in the western part of Austria. And at the moment, I'm living in Salzburg, which is right in between, in the middle of Austria. I attended to since we are talking about making stuff, I've always been building stuff from early ages on. I started with Lego. So when I was a kid, I had tons of Lego. And when I was in my teenage years, I attended to a mechanical school. And I became a mechanical engineer, but I never worked as a mechanical engineer.
Right.
But at that time, I built a lot of stuff like RC cars and RC planes. It's not much use of RC boats in Austria since there's all mountains and very, very few lakes, except if you're living towards Vienna and in the lower plains of Austria. But so that's what I did. But towards the end of the mechanical engineering school, I got familiar with programming, and that drove me away from mechanical engineering. So this was a whole new topic to me then. It was the time of the 8080 computers and the IBM PC. And my first programming year, I started to program with VEX Basic, digital VEX. But then the next year, they substituted the computers in the school with IBM PC. And then I started to program with Turbo Pascal 3. And that was my beginning. Yeah. And that was my beginning of software development. And I worked in software engineering ever since.
What kind of applications did you build or projects did you work on?
Oh, wow, a ton. Usually I try to keep my projects short. I have never worked long-term in a company like 10 years or stuff. So usually I skip after 2 to 3 years to another job or to another project. So right from the start, I tried not to see it as a long-term job, but as a project. And I worked for Siemens. I worked for a company that did antivirus software and cloud storage software. I worked for a company in Vienna that does audio samples. It's a Rolls-Royce with audio samples. It's the Vienna Symphonic Library. And various other. So it's a ton of software that I've written. I'm doing this for over 20 years now almost.
Well, so 20 years as a software developer.
Yeah, in different roles, sometimes more as a product manager, product responsible, sometimes more as a developer. Most of the time, I still like to do hands-on code. Since I like to build stuff, and over the years, I've got a very, very good knowledge about. I'm not an algorithmic programmer, so I'm not in the deeps of mathematics now that may be used, for example, for machine learning or artificial intelligence. But for application development, that's what I'm doing 20 years now.
So you were a software developer for a long time, but since your childhood, you always had an eye or a feel for mechanical things and for hardware projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did that come to where you do, or where you are now, where I can see here looking, just peeking ahead, you recently built a gadget that keeps your beer cold and things like that. How did that software development in Pascal get you to the Arduino? Was there like a moment that triggered that, or how did it happen?
The conversion from higher languages, well, let's consider C++ in between, somewhere between the low-level assembler and higher levels like Pascal or Java or .NET, Sharp or Python. That was a hard part for me, and I was struggling with that for a long time because I always was interested in building stuff at one point, and the switch between just the application development to building something in Arduino was when I was in a company and I had this idea of building an airship. And for that, of course, you would need some controller or some microcontroller or some microprocessor, which you can program. And I would never have thought that I could wrap around my brain about these things until I stumbled over your course, Arduino for Beginners, and step-by-step for Arduino. At that time, still on Udemy. And this was really the trigger. And from that point on, I started to build something around that. One of the early projects, you have seen it on the Facebook page or something like that, was a light installation. I call it Light Gary.
Yeah.
At one point in time, I like to build for my building materials. I like to build stuff with easy materials and light materials like paper mesh or balsa wood and stuff like this. So for this year, at the beginning of this year, I got a 3D printer, a PLA printer. And so since most of the time I don't have a big place to work on, so I keep most of the projects I keep on a smaller scale. That's it, right? That's
I did some research.
Yeah, and my wife was she was doing, this is the own made paper mesh. So this is not bought paper mesh. It's self-made paper mesh, and Light Gary is made out of self-made paper mesh. I hope the listeners forgive my heavy Tyrolean accent.
No, it's perfect. So this is the thing that we're talking about. This is light gray, and you've got the box with a clock, and on top of it you've got, is it Gary?
Yeah, that's Gary. In memory of SpongeBob's Gary, which has two eyes, but mine's just only one eye.
So the colored part is made of paper mesh.
Yep.
And the bottom part is 3D printed, or is it like a box?
No, it's a balsa wood. How do you call it? Box. It's a box that I made. It's all made of balsa wood, painted in brown. I haven't had the time to put some decorations on it, like grass and stone and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was heavily concentrated on this. Was really it's quite a bigger starting project with Arduino, because these are two rotary encoders, and the other one is also with a LED inside. And
There's
I even did
ports there.
my
Yeah.
own PCB.
Yeah.
Whoever wants the plan for the PCB with this one can have it. But when I got the PCBs from Isla, I said, no, I'm not gonna solder it to it, because if I make a mistake, then I have to unsolder it. I have to measure where's the error. So I just kept it on the breadboard and glued the breadboard down into
Yes,
the box.
I sympathize. I know exactly how that feels. You've got to bite the bullet at some point, though, and do it.
Yeah, I know.
So this was your first project.
This was my first Arduino project. Yes.
So like, there's so much going on in here. Like, have you got a record in a diagram, a schematic diagram about where all these wires go and how?
Oh yes, definitely. When the viewer goes, so most of my block entries are in German, since I live in German-speaking country. But if somebody finds the older block entries, there's also a fritzing diagram.
Yeah. Right.
And based on the fritzing diagram, I also have made the PCB. So whoever wants it is free to download it from there. And if he or she does not find it, I'm gonna send the resources to them. That's not much of trouble for me.
Great. Well, so that was your first project. Now, I've got to say, it's like more than a blinking LED. I guess you've done that already. So you grew bigger than the blinking LED. What was the process like from the blinking LED to this? Like, that you felt confident enough to also write a blog post about it and publish it to the world, and you also posted it on the Makers Club.
Yeah.
So it was a big step, right? What was the previous few steps getting there?
Well, wow, I think this is hard to remember. Let's see. Well, so my wife asked me, well, let's do something in paper mesh, and I said, yeah, I don't have a clue what I do today. And then Gary come out, just a snail, and then I'm not fancy just having something like this. I'd like to enrich it in some way. And I think light is a common denominator for all of us. We strive for sun, we strive for light. Nobody wants to live in darkness and in dark places. And so I said, yeah, why not build a light and some sort of night desk lamp out of it. And so at that time, I was heavily into the Arduino step-by-step course. So I thought, what parts could I use to control the clock? What parts could I use to control the LEDs? What parts could I make use of? So since there are rotary encoders, even with a switch in it, so there's a lot of functionality that has not really even programmed out, since there's only the watch to control and different light settings. But that's how I started. I got to your course, and then I thought, okay, how is a rotary encoder? How is that one working?
Yeah. So when you started this, you didn't know how to use any of the components. Is that right?
No. Yeah, that's totally right.
Not at all. Late nights later.
Yeah. The hardest part at that time, that must have been the 7 segments, because they had different polarity to the LED in Gary. There's Gary's eye, in the center of its eye, there's a RGB LED, and this was a different one. The ones
common cathode.
Yeah, common cathode and common anode. So they were opposite. So I had to buy another one, and so this was one of the really harder parts at the beginning. Oh, there are different parts that really work differently, and if I want to have them, well, I could use them, of course, but then you have the different color. Then you have contrary colors on each of the either on the clock or either on Gary, since they are controlled by the same library. This is also a steep learning part, because now you have the gadget, now you have the part, the 7 segments. How do you control it? How low do you go? Do you do your own programming, or can you find a library, a suitable Arduino library that also already controls this stuff?
Yeah.
And there's some learning curve, but if the Arduino community is great and generous, if you do a little bit of digging onto Arduino's websites, then you easily come up with a solution most of the time. It's not that difficult if you are on the right path.
At least you need to know what you're looking for, and usually there
right.
are answers and libraries and components that you can reuse.
Yep.
So if I understand right, the Arduino inside this box controls the clock. So that's a clock that tells you the actual time, right? It's not just
so there are more parts also inside, since we know that from your course that there is no built-in real-time clock in the Arduino.
Yeah.
I bought an Adafruit clock, and this one's soldered, and it's attached to the Arduino board. It's not very sophisticated, so it's not automatically switching between summer and winter time. So it would, the next lesson, if I would pass this project on to somebody else, and I say, well, you could enrich it for with some Wi-Fi functionality to get the time from the internet, or different temperatures from outside to display on the 7 segments and stuff like that. So there's
I have an idea.
Because I just didn't like the idea, just plug in one LED on the breadboard and then turn it on, turn it off. So what's the bigger thing, and how could I enrich it, even if I take it now? At the moment, it's I haven't set it up. It's below my desk here. Yeah. But if I get fancy, then I say, well, yeah, how can I enrich it even more? What can I add into it?
It's really interesting that you say that, because projects are never finished, right? There's always more you can add.
Yeah.
Projects essentially are platforms for learning, and they constantly evolve. And like, I'm thinking about this, imagine possibilities which are quite possible with the hardware that you have there. Like, you can connect it to the internet. You can actually use voice commands to turn Gary on and off. You can get the time to sync with internet clock, so you never have to set it again ever.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You can get other functionalities there with the LEDs. I think that's an Adafruit addressable.
That's Adafruit. Yeah, that's Adafruit ring with the WB20 something diodes.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, a voice control. That's what I do a lot of backing on Kickstarter and Indiegogo for startup electronics. So I have I don't know if you heard about it. I have a Matrix voice lying somewhere in one of my desks around, which I can use. It's a microphone array which you can use. If you have the higher version of it, it also has an ESP32 integrated, so you can already use it out of the box with more complicated projects. And this would be a really good add-on for extending this project. Yes, definitely.
So you can combine projects and get them to talk to each other.
Yeah, and this is, I think, if you're in this stage, when you come that far, then it really starting to make fun, and then it's learning is not an obstacle anymore. Then learning has become fun. And,
it accelerates, doesn't it? So you can get more interesting things done much faster once you have a few projects in your build completed.
Yeah.
You become more comfortable with the tools, more comfortable with discovering new things that you don't know. You assimilate quicker. Also, your project development methodology improves. So how you do the testing, how you capture the details, how you make sure that what you build is robust and works well. Like no loose wires, right?
Yeah, correct.
Lesson earlier. So that's great. I was thinking here, because before we started the recording, I was telling you about my new ESP32 project. And one thing that I've done is voice control as well with Google Assistant, Google Assistant. So I can control this LED, which comes out of the ESP32, just by asking Google. I'm going to try it now. Okay, Google, turn off LED.
Great.
Okay, Google, turn on LED.
Yes, master. LED is on.
Yeah.
Does it say yes, master?
Yeah, I programmed that. You can do that with Gary.
Yeah. That's
awesome. I really like this project, but you got more. So this, I think, is going to resonate with a lot of people in Australia, probably everyone, really. How to keep your beer cold. So you had a problem, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, the problem was for a friend of mine. This is Dario, or Dario Greggio. He's from Italy, and he defected from Italy, so to speak, when Berlusconi came to power. And he ended up in Tyrol, Austria. Is hilarious on its own. And I met him. We are both very much involved. Well, he more even than I with repair cafes. And I met him at a repair cafe, and he's deep into electronics, which is good for me because I can learn really quite a lot from him. Yeah. And we came up with this idea, and he's also the guy which we both had the idea for the virtual city windows. Huge monitor installation. I sometime posted on the Facebook page, and this is just a funny, stupid idea. So that your beer does not get warm, you have to drink it regularly. So that you don't let it stand, and then it gets warm, and you are annoyed on yourself. Oh, it's a warm beer. So there's a buzzer. And the buzzer is for reminding you, and there's a accelerometer and a timer. So the timer measures how long it's so to speak. There is no signal on the accelerometer, and if there's I can't remember how long we kept it, and I can't remember why we had the light sensor on it. That is really one I don't remember why. But when the accelerometer does not give a signal for a longer time, then it gives a sound on the buzzer saying, yeah, you have to drink again. And then if you drink, the accelerometer gets its signals, and then shuts down for I can't remember how long we programmed it. This is solder artwork from Dario.
Yeah.
He's always solder.
No PCB needed, no breadboard needed. It's a 3D electronic construction.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
So it doesn't measure the temperature. It just reminds you. I guess you attach it on your schooner or your beer bottle.
Yeah, the idea was just to hook it up. So it's not a full-fledged product. Just to set it on the brim of your glass and let it sit there, and so with maybe a hook attached with a 3D printed hook, and do it on the side of your glass so that it does not get into your way. And also, of course, this power source is a little bit bigger. We used an older battery pack from an old
camera
from an old snapshot camera, and just attach it to the side of our glass and see how it worked.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome. Is there any software running? Like, is there a microcontroller or just a 555 timer, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so. I really would have to look it up myself. It's I can't remember, but I think so. Yes, I think you are right.
Capacitor. This is probably the timer chip,
Yeah.
or 555, and accelerometer. I don't know which one is which, but I think these two ICs probably do.
Let me take a
the
look,
jobs.
because I can't remember. But this is just
Great. Yeah. True maker stuff. So I was browsing around your website as well, and I see that you have also an interest in the Bitcoin.
Yeah,
You've got
that's right.
your addresses for donations. Because of that, I looked into the Bitcoin yesterday, and the price has gone up, which is good news.
Yep.
I bought some more Bitcoin when it had crashed a few months ago, so I'm very happy about it.
Yeah.
So why are you interested in the Bitcoin?
It took me quite a long time to really get a grasp of it in comparison that it exists since 2009. I stumbled across over it 2 or 3 years ago, something like that, in 2016.
Yeah.
And at first there was only the investment idea: buy some Bitcoin, get rich, something like this.
Unit of holding monetary value in it.
And then I stumbled across Andreas Antonopoulos. I'm pretty sure you know of him. So
I've read 2 of his books. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what really gets me interested is what seems to me the really core idea behind Bitcoin. So not
The blockchain.
Not so much the investment, but more the decentralized value system behind it. So it's not, in this sense, it's not even the technical point that really got me started in Bitcoin. Yeah. I think it would make the world a better place in terms of using finance more fair. Fair in the sense of worldwide, we have a lot of people that are unbanked. They don't have access to bank at all. They don't have access to, besides what they got money in their pocket, they don't have access to any credit system and stuff like that. And it solves some interesting mathematical problems. So this is maybe the technical aspect that is now of interest to me. But at the beginning, it was mere the understanding of investment. But I got very quickly over that, and since I'm following, or since I heard stuff from Andreas Antonopoulos, and since I read his books, I really think it would well, you know how it is. Some people really don't understand how it works at all. And it's not easy to grasp, since we know Bitcoin is not a company. To whom does belong Bitcoin? Well,
there's no bank behind it, right? That alone is strange.
And those are all the ideas that that keep me interested in this stuff. So it's shared. It's a shared idea. It's shared knowledge. It's shared marketplace. It's shared whatever you take with Bitcoin. It's decentralized democracy.
Yeah.
I just came up with this, so I don't know if it's really a proper description.
No, actually, it's close to my understanding. So there is a consensus algorithm. There's got to be a consensus between nodes that are running the Bitcoin network for a transaction to be accepted. Every single transaction is available on the blockchain publicly for everybody to inspect, which means that is an anti-fraud feature right there, which is also a democracy, for it to function, has to be transparent. So the blockchain offers transparency. So yeah, there's a lot of features of the blockchain and of Bitcoin that go far beyond its use as a currency, and go into many other aspects of everyday life. And for that reason, again, I agree with you. This is extremely interesting to me, and I've been monitoring it since 2009 and learning it. But like you, I was very confused in the beginning. Couldn't do much with it. Like, acquiring Bitcoin was very difficult. You couldn't buy it easily. And then once you have it, you didn't really know how to manage it.
Correct, and this is still a hard part. So
that's what this idea is, right? Video.
I have a Ledger Nano, but still, how would I pass it on? There are some interesting questions, and I even wrote to Andreas, and so the questions are: how would you pass it on to your kids in the form of when you pass off this world and leave this world? How would you
like inheritance
transfer this value to your kids? Well, you can't give them the 24 sentence phrase, because they would rip you off right away, so to speak. And he said, well, there's a book, there's a colleague of his, it's a woman, and I can't remember the name, I would have to dig it up in the email. Sure. She has written a book about this topic. But there are so many questions still unanswered about what we really do with this thing. But in my understanding, and in my opinion, and in my grasp of the world, this is this Pandora's box we have opened, and it won't go away. So in one form or another, I think there will be our kids will be living in a world where there will be some decentralized electronic money.
Finance system. So you better learn how to use it, because it's not going away. Right. You better be informed about it, rather than just, oh no, it's too scary.
It won't go away. Definitely not. This box we won't close again. This is also one of the reasons why I started becoming a maker again, because I like to know where things come from, in the sense what is really used to make something, in the sense somebody has to put in an effort in thinking about it, designing it, making a concept about it, a technical concept, a product concept. And so when my son asks me something and I want to giving an idea what's involved of that, he has it in his hands. Well, he's going to a supermarket and buying whatever, you name it. But what is behind the story of the product behind? There are a lot of people involved most of the time, and the going to the store and buying it is just a very small facet of that.
It's the end of the supply chain. There's a lot more behind it. It's not visible to the end user.
Right.
So it's like, where do apples come from? It's like kids today go to the supermarket and get the fruit, but they've never seen the tree that makes avocado, for example.
Exactly. Where does it come from? You have to plant it, you have to water it, you have to take care of it. It has to grow. It takes time, and you have to collect the fruit from the tree. So this is in my opinion is important to understanding of the world. So this is
I agree.
What I'm trying to pass on.
It's a way to understand how the world works by understanding supply chains, because we are dependent on supply chains, whether it's for energy, for food, for building your house, taking you from place A to place B. It's all supply chain, and we're just the end user. But you don't really understand the big picture unless you understand how all those things come together. Not the details, of course. I'm not saying go and build one, but just to have a good understanding of what's behind it. I wanted to talk about another one of your projects. I'm not sure if this is a current project completed or one of your plans, and that is the virtual city windows. I found your source code.
Yep.
You posted about this on the Makers Club a few months ago, Tell us what this is all about. It looks like a screen installed in various parts of the world. Gives you a window.
Yeah, that's the idea. So we had the software behind it is very easy. It's just video streaming from point A to point B in a peer-to-peer network. That's not the hard part. The hard part is so this is the software part. Then there's the mechanical part and the hardware part. How do you construct such a video wall? It's even bigger at the moment. We are still working on it. It will be a 3x4 video wall with approximately 46-inch monitors for starters. And so hardware on one hand is not the issue because the monitors are easily replaceable with also with more. We are trying to make it as cheap as possible, or as cheap as possible. And the idea is that, for example, that there's one installation in Innsbruck and there's one installation in another interesting city, and this could go all over the world. In that sense, our idea is not just interact via small mobile phone. Video streaming from one phone to another is already available if you download the right app. But we wanted to make a more impressive interaction and immersive installation. So that's where the size comes into perspective. And at the moment, we're talking to our town fathers in Innsbruck, and they are pretty much interested in the idea. They like the idea. And at the moment, we are in contact with some fab labs and makerspaces around the world. I have written to all of the makerspaces and fab labs emails that I found. And at the moment, let's say about 20 interested cities and, so to speak, makerspaces are working on something in their city to set it up.
So the idea is they take the schematics and the plans that you've got on GitHub, and they will build their own virtual city window.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
And
so we are giving them out a reference with the software as a common denominator. This will be the interface, so to speak, which we have to agree on. But besides that, if somebody is doing a 4x4 LED wall worth $100,000, we don't care. Our idea is to build it with cheaper monitors. And trying to get an immersive interaction with audio and video, so that we in Innsbruck can show to guys that are living in, since we got 9 months of winter over here, this year is horrible. We got only 20 degrees centigrade just as of now. We had a very long winter. We had a very rainy spring, so it was cold till 2 weeks ago, really cold, below 10 degrees centigrade.
Yeah.
And so it's easy for us to demonstrate snow, but we wanted to have an interaction maybe with somebody living in warmer areas, like closer to the equator in Sydney, why not? Yeah, sure. And or Melbourne or Western Australia or wherever whoever wants to do is fine with us.
So I can imagine a situation. You've got one of the screens in Innsbruck, and there's one, say, in Sydney, in Town Hall, for example, on the harbour. And I'm in Sydney. I stand here. What I see is Innsbruck, or one of the scenery in Innsbruck. I can speak. It could be another person standing there and looking at me, because I guess there's a camera somewhere here. High definition, my image comes through.
There will be cameras between. We don't know how many cameras we really need. If we at the moment we will start with 1 or 2, we will be, at the moment, they will be in the cross intersection between the monitors.
Yeah.
And also microphone. And then at the moment, this is the hard part of the installation is not so much technical problems. At the moment, it's more the political, let's say, stuff, because
It's a public space, right? You need permissions.
Yeah, we want to set it up public, and we want to set it up in front of an interesting place.
Yeah.
There are many interesting places in Innsbruck, like the Goldene Stachel, or the background image you see here. This is very close to the mountains where I grew up. So this is actually on the base station of the skiing area close to Innsbruck. So this is from a presentation which I had for our town fathers in Innsbruck. So in this sense,
and this normally is snowed under, right? There's a lot of snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got, I just noticed, that's why I highlighted this bit. You can also, or at least you may plan to do real-time language translation. So I can speak in English, and then another person in Austria, a German-speaking person, can speak in German, and we can understand each other. It's like a Star Trek universal translator.
Yep. I know for sure that Microsoft has integrated this in Skype Enterprise for some of the languages. There are videos on YouTube you can watch about that. It's definitely from, I think it's simplified Mandarin or something like that to English, and from Spanish to English, and also vice versa, of course. And I'm pretty sure that there are on the cloud services, no matter if you go to Amazon Cloud Services or to Google Cloud Services.
Google Translate, I think we're working on that.
They're pretty. This is possible. This should be possible.
So it's a possible add-on, and it would make a lot of sense here. Like that's the visual plus the language barrier. So the visual barrier is dealt with your cameras and the displays, and then you use this technology for the language barrier, and you've got a real window that can make communication like so transparent between any two parts of the world.
Yep.
Amazing. Great. I hope it goes well. And I've been looking at the progress of the project, and happy to help as I can. Let's talk a little bit about the future, not the far future, but like say this year. What are your plans? Like, is it something that you want to learn so that you can use that new knowledge in new projects, or the opposite, projects that you want to do that you need to build up your knowledge to be able to deal with them?
Yep. There's I'm planning, just for fun, I'm planning to do a car fleet. It's, let's say 3, 5, 4 cars, and I want to implement a swarm algorithm in those cars. Well, it's easy on the computer. There's stuff for Unity or stuff like that, Unity 3D. And for this, the mathematics is not that difficult to. It's not that high level of artificial intelligence. But so I want to have so let's say 6 cars running around in a swarm in the park, just doing their own stuff, like we would have birds in the sky, like doves or pigeons or sparrows or something like that. I want to have 6 cars. They go in the park, going around in whatever shape or form they produce on their own, communicating to each other. So I really have to learn about some technology, how to communicate from one processor to each other via radio. So when you mentioned MQTT in the beginning, so I really have to learn about some protocols, fast protocols, how I can communicate to my devices
It's a very interesting project because it's got so many problems in it that you have to solve. That's the communication, but I guess each unit would need to also be aware of its environment and make
Yeah,
decisions
right.
based on
It
what
has
is
to be aware
happening.
of its neighbors, yeah,
Yeah.
and of the surrounding, yeah.
And then as I guess the human controller will need to have some sort of control on it to specify a direction or like a location to go
Yeah,
to.
that was my first thought. I would have one car that I steer with the radio control for a begin,
Yeah.
and the others would follow in a swarm fashion the other car, but on their own. So this would be my first aim to do. And then in the second step, get rid of the radio control and have other measurements to have them self-sustained in the park area.
How have you figured out what the very first step is? Like, would it be one car, just simple remote control, able to sense the world around it, perhaps to avoid obstacles, like something very, very simple that you have zero risk in it? And
No,
then
it's even simpler. I think in the first step, I don't consider obstacles at all. I think I have pretty much to do on this by itself. Just have the telemetry sent to the other cars so that they really. I just don't want them having one line. This would be stupid to me. So they would really have some implement some algorithm defining space between them. How far am I from my neighbors? Which direction is my leader going? And how can I follow? But not so much with obstacles in the park. So I take out these out of the equation, the first part,
to begin with,
and bring them on in the later step, in the second step, or even in a third step. So this is definitely I want to learn about in this year. And I'm building at the moment. I am also building an AR glasses, augmented reality glasses.
augmented reality, yeah.
There's an open source project from a company that has been building a motion detection device. It's called Leap Motion.
Yeah.
And they have issued, they have produced open source augmented reality glasses. It's called Project North Star. And I have already one pair of those glasses. Let me just open up. As for instance, I have it here close.
Oh,
I don't know if you can see them.
Oh, yeah. So
this is the first version of it. There are two displays behind here. And there's a refracting lens over here. It's 50% see-through. So these displays send out the light and will be reflected from the glasses 50% back.
To your eyes, so you get stereo vision.
Yeah, right. And this is then done. I'm using Unity 3D for starters. And over here, this is the Leap Motion, which does detection of hands and finger motion. So
you can do gestures in front of your face, and those will be detected by the Leap Motion, and that's your user interface.
Yeah, but it in this sense is still quite stupid. What I'm already doing a second version of these with a higher resolution displays. And there will be more sensors up here. There will be a sensor for tracking in environment, so for spatial mapping, and for with an inertial measurement unit. I think it's called IMU.
Yep.
So that I can solve similar problems like an Oculus Rift or a Vive. So in this sense, where am I in the room? And so this is also something like Gary. This is endless, because then you know that you are in the room, and then is the first step what you can do with the room. So is there a building, another building? Is there a picture hanging on the wall? So this is quite some stuff you have to solve up to this point to recognize if there's.
I see a lot of long nights ahead of you.
Yeah.
As you're embarking in this project.
The 24 hours is too short.
That will never end. So I'm looking at this technology in particular, and as you are evolving your prototype, the technology that you're using in your prototype also evolves, which opens up new options for you to try out, which means you evolve your prototype, and it never ends.
No, it never ends. But this is, to me, this is fun. This is what I like. This is why I am here in this world.
Absolutely. That's being a maker. You never end. And I think that is what is so interesting. It's a lifestyle that is constantly immersed in not just technology, but what can I do? It's like this learning aspect and then the doing aspect. What can I do with this technology? You've got the curiosity to learn, but then also you've got the urge to make. These together are powerful, and it's really a lifestyle.
Yeah, I agree. It's that's a good description. It's a lifestyle. This is how we grasp the world, is by doing, by making.
I'm looking. I'm just going to share one more thing here. Here it is. Yeah, this is Leap Motion, the website.
Yep, correct.
If anybody's interested to learn more about this technology, that's just where you can look it up. And this is what you used as well.
Yeah, because Leap Motion came out of a Kickstarter campaign, so I have the Leap Motion since they ever came out.
Yeah,
and
that's when I got mine, Kickstarter. Yeah.
Yeah, so Project North Star is also, this is hosted on GitHub, so everybody has the same access. There's a discourse channel, and at the moment I think there's 600 crazy people around the world trying, or not just trying, building those classes that I have.
Yeah, so this contains instructions, right?
Yeah, but you have to differentiate. Leap Motion is just a product. And they try to sell it also, which makes sense for the Oculus Rift or for the Vive. But they have a blog, and Project North Star is mentioned on their blog. And they have a tag called that's first one. First one is Project North Star. And there's also then a link to the GitHub repository where you can find the 3D STL files to print this. There's already a small company in China which does the refractive glasses, this kept me a long time from doing it, because how would you make the refractive glasses if you would have to do it on their own? Yeah. So luckily there is a small company in Shenzhen, China, which does it for a very reasonable price.
Perfect.
But everything else beside the glasses and the Leap Motion is out of the 3D printer and is just homemade.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much to dig into after a conversation.
Yeah.
Gotta go and do some research now. Well, I think we'll leave it at that, Martin. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast. I personally learned a lot, and also understanding better where you came from, what you're doing now with your projects, and what your plans are, which are very ambitious, I've got to say. It's just amazing. So thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me on. I was also looking forward, and I without you, I wouldn't have gotten into Arduino and stuff like that. So
I really appreciate that. How can people get in touch with you? What's your preferred method of communication?
I think best way is to go via email. They can go to my blog. I think there's my email, or if you just leave the email on the podcast somewhere.
Okay. I can see you've got.
Yeah, right. It's Martin at
Skype. Plenty.
Yeah. So, and there's a contact form. This is the easiest way for contact.
Perfect. All right. So this is easy. You've got plenty of ways to get in touch, and of course you're on Facebook, and you are on the Makers Club too.
So. Yeah, definitely. Also, yes.
Great. Well, have a very productive rest of your night, which is about midnight now.
Yeah, it's midnight. Yes.
And again, thank you very much, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.